Alright, you wrong'uns, old Jack, aka Blender Ninja here. Right, in this tutorial we're going to be doing a workflow in Blender 2.83 Alpha. If you haven't got Blender 2.83 Alpha, I'll put a link below, you can download it there. By the way, Blender is free. Now this tutorial is aimed at new users. However, if you followed on with some of my earlier workflow tutorials in Blender 2.82, I would strongly suggest you stick around with this tutorial, because in this tutorial we deal with a new workflow system which is, in my view, is so much more easier and not so cluttered as in the old workflow in Blender 2.82 Alpha. Right, with that said, let's jump straight in there. Right, so when you boot up Blender, obviously you're going to have the splash screen, click general, and then you're going to be faced with this screen here with the camera and this offensive box that they just, for some reason, put in the scene. First thing you want to do is delete this offending object. How you delete it is just press the delete key in your on your keyboard, and that offensive cube is now gone. Right. The next step we want to do is, because I'm going to be using a reference image that I created earlier, that I drew earlier on, I'm going to first of all get the screen in the correct orientation. So click on the X, and then you're going to have the front screen. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go add image as a reference. Yeah, click on there. And then we're going to look for my image, which is on my local disk, and it's called, it's in my Scavenger learning resources, and we're going to load up this one, and we're going to load up another one, image add. We're going to load up this one here. Okay, so these are the images we're going to be working with for our grease pencil workflow. Right, so we've got our images sorted out. So the next step we want to do is we want to add a grease pencil object. So, but before we do that, I want to just deal with my preferences slightly, because the icons are very small, and because I'm an old geezer, I want my icons to be slightly bigger. So I'm going to just go to edit, preferences, and I'm just going to scale up the resolution so my icons are slightly bigger. So there we go, we've got icons bigger. Obviously you don't have to follow that step. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a grease pencil object into the scene. How we go about doing that is we just go add, and then scroll down to a grease pencil here and add blank. And now we've got our grease pencil object. It's coming to the scene as G pencil here. We want to double click that, and we want to call it the name of my character. This is a model sheet for this character that I'm creating. I'll get into that in a bit later. For the moment, let's not worry about that. Let's just get the scene set up, and we're going to call this character, my character is called Rex Z13. That's his name, Rex Z13. So we've got our grease pencil object. Now, a grease pencil object is an object that can be moved in real space. And like with a grease pencil object, you can have layers within your grease pencil object. Now it's a little bit more sophisticated than just like booting up Photoshop and you having your layers in there. Every object can have individual layers. So what we're going to first do is set up our layers in a grease pencil. How we go about doing that is we click on this icon here. Make sure that your grease pencil object is selected, which my one is. It's highlighted, and that's it here. And click on this icon here, and then you're going to be greeted with this scene here. Now we want to create a new layer for this object. So we'll click on there, and then we're going to call this layer pencil. Just double click it and let's call this pencil. We're going to create another layer, and this one we're going to call solid. It's going to be for our solid block colors. And then we're going to create another layer, and this is going to be for our shadows. And let's just drag that out so you can see it clearly. And we're going to create one more layer, and this is going to be for our highlights. And then, so we've got our 4 layers done. Now, we're also going to set up our material setup. And what we're going to do with our materials, we're going to have a material here. And we're going to call one block color. And then we're going to add another one, and the next one we're going to call pencil. And we're going to add another one, and we're going to call that shadow. And then one more, we're going to call it light. Okay, we're not gonna, in earlier tutorials, we would play around with the material coloring all here, but we ain't gonna be doing that so much here in the moment. We're gonna be dealing with that with vertex, in the vertex colors, right? So we've got our 4 materials set up here, and then we've got, and we click on here, we've got our layers. Now don't get these two confused because it's easily done. I confuse them now and again myself. So that's our grease pencil layers, and that's our material layers. Okay, so let's click back on our grease pencil objects, on our layers. So what we're going to be dealing with first, let's lock all of these off now so we don't by mistake click on them. How you do that is just click down, you can just drag it, and then now all of these layers are turned off. And we're going to just be dealing with the pencil layer. Make sure that you click on it, and we're going to be just dealing with the pencil layer. Now I'm using a pen tablet, if I can find it, and I've just found it. Right, obviously my organizational skills are so great. Make sure that your grease pencil object selected, which is obviously this one here, the squiggly line. Make sure it's selected. And then we're going to swing over to object mode. And you've got different modes here. What we want is the draw mode. Click on there, and then once you clicked on that mode, the whole display is going to change. You're going to be entering the mode for grease pencil. Now, what we're doing now is we're going to be setting up our pencil colors. So make sure you're on the material object, make sure you're on pencil, turn off the other ones, the other materials. Don't get confused with your grease pencil layers. These are your layers. Yeah, you turn these off anyway at the moment. You can turn them all off by just sliding on and off. Make sure they're all, it doesn't matter if these are off at the moment because we're dealing with materials. But what we really want is this pencil to be highlighted, yeah? So make sure pencil's highlighted, the others are off. And then swing over to here. Now up the top, you should now see pencil here. Now you see this icon here, this is your vertex colors. Now basically, what we're gonna do is we click on here, click on there, and then click on, make sure that's blue and that's highlighted. And then you're gonna, this screen will appear. Now this is our palette for our vertex colors. You've got all these different colors for our vertex colors. So say for example, we just click on them and we want to draw. Now you might click on it, but it's not going to draw now. It's not going to draw the color that you want. Even though you clicked on it, it's not drawing the color. But the reason why that is because you need to be in rendered mode to see the vertex colors. So click on, you see this this icon here, this is the rendered colors. So now I can click on here, and any color I select, my vertex color, I'll be able to see it. Yeah. See that? All that. You can draw any color now. That's your vertex color. So you've got any color you want is available to you here. Right. However, we're not going to be using this palette at the minute. So let's just, I'm just going to delete this. A little quick tip is when you're deleting items, don't use dissolve, use stroke. It just makes life quicker to delete and use strokes. So let's go back to the draw mode and go back to our palettes. Now, that palette is all good and dandy, but we don't want that palette. We're setting up a particular palette for our pencils. So I want two pencil colors. So I'm going to delete this palette and I'm going to go new, and I'm going to call this pencil. And I'm going to have a blue pencil, like a kind of a sketchy pencil. And I'm just going to go click on that plus icon, and that's created a palette color. And then I'm going to create another color, just a grey one, a grey pencil. And then click on there. And now this is my pencil palette. So that's my palette. Now you can have as many palettes as you want, but let's just deal with this at the moment. So we've got our pencil palette, and that pencil palette is linked to our pencil material. Yeah. So now if I want to draw with my blue pencil, I click on there, and now I can draw. If I want to draw with my grey pencil, click on there, and I can draw with my grey pencil. It's really powerful. It takes a little head. Your head might be spinning at the minute. Mine was when I was trying to understand it. But once you understand the principles of it, it's very, very powerful. It opens up so much scope and power. Power's at your fingertips now. So it's really, this feature is an amazing feature once you get your head around it. Okay, so we've set up our pencil palette. Let's turn off our pencil palette. And now what we're going to do is we're going to deal with our block color palette. So let's unlock that and click on block color. If you notice here, we've got our block color palette materials highlighted here. We're going to click on here again. Click on the blue icon, click on there. And we don't want to use our pencil palette. We want to create a new palette. And this one's going to be our block color palette. So all we need to do is click on this icon here, and it creates a new palette. And we're going to have our block colors. Now the block colors are going to be the color of the T-Rex. The T-Rex, which is orange and grey. So click on there, and let's just call this block color, so we're not confused with this. So we're matching this vertex color palette to our material color palette, so we don't get confused. Yeah, which is easily done. I mean, it does sound, I'll be honest with you, it does sound like it's really complicated. But once you get your head around it, you understand the power, and you understand that it's a great feature. But, you know, if you come from a direct 2D background, and, you know, you may seem to think, oh, this is really complicated. Oh, I don't know if I can be arsed with this. But it's honestly, if I can work it out, and I'm not the sharpest knife in a knife box, I'm sure you can. Just have a look, keep on getting at it, and you'll be able to work it out. Anyway, I digress. I'm going off on one now. So right, we're going to basically again set up our palette colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to let's brighten this up. I'm going to have an orange color. And that's, I'll have that. Now, and then we're going to have, let's set up another one, and we're going to have our stripe color for our block stripes. We want that to be grey. kind of a darky grey. We can change the colour later on if it doesn't work, so it's not a problem. This is not fixed in stone, the way the colours are. And then we add another one. So now we've got our blue two colours, and also we want the teeth. That's another block colour. So we'll add another one, and then we'll just make that white. I accidentally created another one by mistake. Click on there if you want to delete it. Just click on that minus key. So now we've got 3 colours, and then we want his eyes as well. So again, we just his eyes are yellow. So let's just. Another thing that you should remember when you're doing this is that when we're gonna deal with this later, but when you're adding light into your scene, you don't want your color, vertex color, to be ramped too high, because then it's not gonna reflect the light. So you want it to be not too much, because when you put a light in your scene, it would then ramp up the color, if you understand. But I'll show you when we get to the lighting part of it anyway. So again, we're gonna add another one. So we've got four vertex colors, yeah, in our block color materials. So we've got a block color here. So that's that job done. So we've got a block color. So the next thing we want to do is, for the shadow and light, we'll deal with that later. For the shadows and lights, we'll deal with that later. For the time being, these are the main ones. Yeah, they're the main ones we want to deal with. The other thing we could do with is an ink color. We're going to create a material for the ink. We're going to create just an actual material for our ink. So let's just turn that off, and then we just have a plus. As I say, it sounds a bit confusing, but you do it a couple of times, and eventually, you know, your little brain, works it out, and it kind of, you know, my little brain anyway, eventually everything just clicks, and you go, oh yeah, it was working. So anyway, we click on plus, and we click on there, and we're gonna turn this into ink. Now make sure that we're still in the materials, not your layers. Always make sure we're dealing with materials now, not layers. Yeah, this is the thing that will mess you up a lot, you know. So ink, we've got a stroke color, which is black, and that's fine, because that's going to be our ink, our stroke color. But at the moment, it's using our the palette for the what's it again, because it's on vertex, we're not using our material. So if we just turn that off, and now it's going to use our inks. So if I draw now, it should use our ink color. See that? Yeah. So if I switch that to ink, and now it's using our inks. Yeah. We're no longer using the vertex. So you can swap between your vertex and your materials, which is again another powerful feature. Okay. So we've set that up, and it's looking good. We were ready to go for the next step. Now, the thing that I'm going to say to you, because you might go, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. Every time I boot up a scene, I've got to do all this nonsense. No, you don't. You can just save your preferences. So you can just go to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. And then basically every time you boot up Blender, your startup file, your scene's going to be exactly the same every time. So you don't have to do this nonsense all the time. It's done, dusted, and it's sorted out for your unique template starting point. We're ready to start actually eventually doing some drawing now. So let's go to our pencil material. So let's turn that off. Click on pencil, make sure it's unlocked. And then we're going to go up to our layers, make sure it's on pencil, to turn off all the others. And now we've got our pencil layer sorted out. We're going to switch up into our vertex color. Click on there. And then we're going to look for, at the moment it's on block color. We don't want that one. We want our pencil palette. Click on there. And now we've got our pencils. Yeah, that's what we want. So now we're ready to start doing some drawing. Now, it would be remiss of me not to say, you know, how this idea for this T-Rex model sheet came about, and what it's all about. This character. Right. Basically, I'm making a 2D animated film called Scavenger, and after watching, I don't know if you guys watch Primal. It's an animated scene. I can't remember well, I do know the guy's name, but if I pronounce it, I'm going to just butcher it. But it's the same guy who created the Samurai Jack series. Well, anyway, he's created this series called Primal. I would highly recommend you watch it. It's one of the best animations I've ever seen. It's aimed at adults. It's not for kids. It's like, it's really aggressive, but it's great. And anyway, the point is, I wrote a screenplay for this animated series that I'm going to be creating. And after watching Primal, I fell in love with the T-Rex. So I said, right, I've got to have a T-Rex in my screenplay. And I've changed one of the characters to be a T-Rex. It works kind of in a weird way, but it's all going to be working. So yeah, so this character was inspired by Primal, So if I was to, if he looks familiar, then yeah, he does look familiar because he was inspired by Primal. As I say, check it out. But anyway, I've gone off on a tangent as per usual. So right, we're on our pencil layer, and we're going to do some sketching now. So in this sketch here, because this is concept design, I'm not totally happy with the way his teeth are. So I mean, in Primal, the character Rex is obviously a different color, and it was really tempting for me to just copy the color because I loved it. But I thought, no, let's give him a tiger color. In Primal, the character's called Fang, the T-Rex, and his teeth is about that size here. It's not so big. But in my one, I want the teeth to be bigger. He's only got one fang and it's big. But in mine, I want the teeth to be in a different area. So, and to be still big. So for this, I did this sketch already in grease pencil. I actually did this sketch. And, but in this, I'm going to edit it slightly. So we're going to bring the teeth, this tooth, a bit closer up to the front. So we're just going to, as I say, we're just still sketching. So concept design. And then we're going to sketch that. Now, I'm not always going to talk now. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do this quick kind of sketch. But I am going to how do you put it? Jump ahead at some point when it comes to doing my inking. In fact, I might jump ahead now, and then you don't need to see me tracing over this character here. So I'm going to jump ahead now, and then once it's done, we're going to come back and do some inking. Right, I've overlaid the character. So now I wanted to start doing some inking. So what I'm going to do now is to do my inking. Let's go to the reference image that we want. And it's that one there. Now, to see this, the large one is highlighted. I should have given it a name, to be quite honest. So it's that one there. And what we're going to do with this object, now that it's selected, we're going to basically lower the transparency on the object itself. So go to object mode. So as I say, make sure you clicked on that the object in the scene collection. Yeah, that's the image. You see that? That's the image. And then you go to, as I say, object mode. And then make sure you clicked on it. So now it's make sure that it's clicked on it. So it's now we're in object mode, and you see it's highlighted. And what we're going to do is just take down the opacity. So we'll just click on there and just slide it down. And then, so now we can see just the rough shape of it. Go back to our grease pencil object, which is, remember, is Rex there, that squiggly line. Click on it. Go back to draw mode. And what we're going to do now is we're going to lower the opacity level on the pencil. So let's click on the material icon again, and then we're going to basically lower the opacity level. So we don't need that because we're going to do some inking now. So we lower that opacity down as well. You just want to just see it roughly. Okay. So that's that sorted out. We're no longer using pencils anymore. We're not even going to be using them for any of the other stuff we're going to do. So let's lock that off. What we are going to be using is our inks. So we click on ink, unlock that. So remember, we're still in materials, ink, and then we just click on this icon here, again, our layers. Make sure that we see in here, we've not added, in my infinite wisdom, I forgot to add an ink layer. I added an ink material, but I didn't add an ink layer. So we're going to do that now. So let's just turn off pencil and then just go plus and then just call this ink. Now layers is just like in Photoshop, if you're familiar with it. It's like drawing on plates of glass. So whatever's on the top is going to show first, and then the layer below will be overlapping. Yeah, so just imagine you're drawing on plates of glass in your layer system. So because of that, we want our inks to be on the top. So let's just slide it up. And now our ink is on the top and we're ready to rock and roll. Well, kind of, because at the moment we're on vertex. We want to be on material. So we just click on there, and now we are actually ready to rock and roll with our inks. Now, we could obviously ink it really roughly by just, you know, just sketching your inks like that if you want. We could do it like that. However, I'm going to show you another technique. I'm going to do two different styles. I'm going to do the longer version. I'm going to do part of the character in the long-winded version. Well, I think I'll do the whole character, so bear with me. In the long-winded version. In fact, what I'm going to do, because it's going to be, otherwise it's going to take too long, is I'll do the eye in the more precise kind of version, and I'll do this character in the rougher version because it's going to take too long. So let's just go back to our what's again object scene, object mode. Make sure that the picture, empty or one or whatever you call it, your reference image, is highlighted, and then we're going to ramp up the transparency because I can't see the eye that well, so I'm going to just ramp it up a bit so I can get to see the eye a bit better. Yeah, and then we're going to go back to our click on our grease pencil object. Let's get rid of that camera because I'm going to delete the camera, so it's just getting in the way. And then we're going to ink this eye now. And how we're going to ink the eye is, as obviously first of all, make sure that our Rex object is selected. Go draw mode. Now, if you're doing really fine stuff, my go-to brush for doing really fine stuff, and if you followed along with my tutorials, you would know which one it is. It's this one here. And how you would then, you can ink by using this. But before I do anything in the inking, I usually play around with the thickness profile. So you click on here, and then you can play around with the curves. So at the moment, if I was to do a quick line here, this is how it looks. Yeah, and you can move the points of your curve by moving these controller points. Yeah. So I usually play with that, and when you're happy with it, you can press return, and then it places it down. Or say, for example, let's just do another one. And if I want to add another point to it, I just press E on the keyboard, and then I can add another point. So you can have a continuous line by pressing the E key for continuous line. So you can do some really cool shapes with it. Nice inking lines. So again, you can change the fall off and the drop off of the thickness profile by playing around with these settings here. Yeah, so if we say we want really madly aggressive with it, we can, so it's got that aggressive line there. But I'm quite happy with the way it looks at the minute with that line. So let's just bring that back up to kind of roughly where it was at the beginning. Let's just make sure to do a quick test. So that's a nice line. Okay, so we're ready to now ink our eye. So let's ink him. I want the thicker bit to be at the bottom, like, so it's like a shadow. If you notice with really cool, great inkers, and I'm definitely not a great inker, but with great inkers, they usually emphasize the bottom of the object, like, so it's in shadow. So you'd usually have a thicker line at the bottom and a thinner line at the top. Now, if you want to scale your ink line, you can either do it up here with your radius, or you can press the F key, and you can scale up your ink line. Now, as I said, I'm not the greatest inker, but you get the drift. You can do some. You can see that you can do some. You can get some really great ink lines with this way of doing it. Obviously, it's long. It's longer to do it this way. I mean, for animation production, especially if you're a one-man team like I am, I'm gonna be inking my characters in a quicker way for my animations in the future, because it's all about speed as well. But if you want to do a really nice piece, you can take your time and use this key. Obviously, there's all different ones, but I'm not even going to get in there. Just play around with it, and you might not think this is the best one, but I think you will. Don't like that's too thick. And for these round, the round bits, I'm going to just use the freehand brush for this, because otherwise it just takes too long. Let's see. Now I've got my hotkeys set up and everything, but because this isn't a tutorial for you guys, I'm not going to even, I disable them. Because otherwise it's quicker, you can just hit, if you have a hotkey you can just hit delete, but because I disabled them for this tutorial. But you can set up your hotkeys. I've got on one of my other tutorials, off the top of my head I can't remember which one it is, but I do actually show you how to do my hotkeys and how to set it up really quickly. I'm not going to get into it now because we've got a lot on our plate at the minute about me going off on a tangent talking about hot. Animation, it's just awesome, man. Seriously, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it if you haven't seen it already. You know, I was a bit late to the party on that one, but I'm glad I arrived eventually. Right, so that's the eye ink done using the more controlled but slower method. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna sketch this character, Rex, just with the rougher way of doing it, you know, very quickly. Again, we don't have to change any layers, so we're on our ink layer ready. So I'm gonna sketch him out, so you can get an idea of doing the different layers. But before I do that, it's a bit too bright now, so let me just lower the transparency on the bitmap, and probably lower the transparency on the so as I say, you just go to object modes if you want to get back on there, and we're going to lower the transparency on the image, reference image that we loaded in. I should just click on this and call it reference image. I'm pretty lazy, forgive me. You should get in the habit of naming everything when you load it in. It just makes life so much easier, but it is what it is. I didn't do it right. Anyway, moving on swiftly. So what we want to do now again is lower that opacity down, so you can see just the line of the what we want to do. Okay, so that'll do. Let's go back to click on the object, and let's go to draw mode, and then let's delete these lines, and let's start some. Even though we're doing it rough, I'm still gonna try and do a decent job with it. So when it comes to his face, I'm gonna, you know what? I think it might be even easier to these blue lines on this one. I don't need them really. I only really traced it over because I created the pencils. I don't really need it. So I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. We're gonna delete this layer, this pencil layer. Let's just delete it. Don't really need it. So let's delete it. And then we're gonna ink this character again. Even though I've inked him, we're gonna ink him again. In that rough way that I was talking about. So let's do a quick. The activate layer is locked. So let's just go up to ink, and now it's not locked. And let's we're gonna put his teeth. As I say, I want his teeth a bit closer here. So let's just do that here. Now, depending how long, if this starts taking too long, me doing this, I might just skip, and then you can see the finished item. As I say, when you're inking, as I say, I'm not someone that you should be listening to too much when it comes to inking. But when it comes to doing your shadows, you were at the bottom of characters, whatever. Just give it a thicker line. You know, do a bit. I'm using a pen tablet, so I just got to do it a bit thicker. I'm still mastering inking. I'm not the greatest inker, as you can see, but I need to be really good, because when I do my animated short, it's going to be a free series. Scavenger is going to be a free series, 3-part series. I need my inking game out. It needs to be on point, and at the moment it really isn't. So I've got to work on my inking game big time if I want this project to be of a caliber, a high caliber, which I want it to be. So maybe let's go back to this object, and we can the reference image. Let's bring up the brightness again to it. See, what I'm doing now as well is make sure you click on it. Let's bring that back up so I can actually see a bit better what I'm doing. Where was I? I lost the plot. Doesn't matter. Let's get back onto it. Let's click on the Rex and go back to draw mode. Okay, so let's go back into drawing. So I say, remember when you're doing underneath, you can give it a bit more underneath of the character. You can give it a bit more thickness. You know, because it's kind of, or depending which way your light is. So as I say, me going up to edit undo is not the way you should be doing it. You need to set up your hotkeys. That's the better way to do it. You set your hotkeys up. The way I'm doing it's kind of half-assed. But as I say to you, I haven't got a choice, because to make this tutorial kind of easier for you guys to follow along with, I disabled all my hotkeys. Because that's the kind of guy see, for animation, I guess we are, not just me, but more than likely you will, to get, if you're a one man army, you probably will do your inking by hand. It's a little bit fiddly with the inking, because what would be great is if you, on this icon's hair, if you had a rotate. Apparently, I was watching a video a little while ago, and they are talking about putting an icon here where you can actually rotate your canvas, and I think that would be great for inking, so that you can just, you know, if there's another icon here, you can just go, you know, scroll it like with move and whatever, and zoom, rotate one to rotate your canvas. It's definitely what this what's needed. And I was watching a video on the Blender today, and it had the grease pencil team guys on it, and they were actually saying that, someone asked the question saying, well, we need that icon here, and they said, yeah, it is on the to-do list, but how long it takes them is another matter. But the grease pencil team, props to them. I think they've done a great job, and I love everything they've done, and I'll just big them up big time. You know, you know, imagine this program is actually free. You know, and I strongly believe this program is going to be industry standard for 2D stuff before it becomes industry standard for 3D. But I think it's only a matter of time that this becomes industry standard. But it's not perfect, Blender. There are problems that I see with it, but there is nothing out there that competes with grease pencil. Nothing, nada. Don't care what anyone says. If someone says Toon Boom, Harmony, I say you're smoking crack, son. Because there's no way Toon Boom Harmony can do what Blender can now do. Not a chance, mate. I just think it's only a matter of time before grease pencil for 2D animation is going to be taken up by all the studios, the 2D studios, for a fact. It's just a matter of time. Eventually they're going to realize it. And now the thing is, I ain't a fanboy. I don't want you to think, oh man, you know, it's all about Blender. I just dream about Blender all the time and all that. I don't. I see Blender as a tool to get them to tell my stories. And I'm going to be using, for the Scavenger mini animated shorts that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be not just using Blender to make it my product. I'm going to be using another program called Akitsu. Because my Scavenger project that I'm going to be making is going to be a mixture of 2D. See what I mean by it's a bit difficult to get the lines because you haven't got that scroll. But I suppose if I just flick it and then I draw, I don't really want to do that. It's just hard to get your lines right without this rotation thing, that's a fact. Anyway, that'll do. So I've done that inking for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip, because I've got to do the inking yet for this character, well, the same character here, but it's a different pose. And this is Rex as a baby. Wonder what that was. That's him as a baby. So that's Rex 13 as a baby. So I'm going to do the inking for that, and do a little few embellishments, and then fast forward. So as I say, I'm going to fast forward for a bit, and then because you don't need to see me inking the rest of it. And then after I've done the inking, then we're going to move on to our block colors. Okay. All right, guys, if you're still with me, congratulations. It's time for us to start celebrating by blocking in. Right. What we want to do now is not move the character, move it like that. Right. So obviously now I've inked everything, and then I've even embellished it with putting Scavenger and model sheet, etc. on there as a text object. Right. What we're going to do now is, as I say, we're going to block him in now. So how we go about doing that is, let's just make sure that we're in our block color in our material is selected, which it is here, because I did it earlier on. And then make sure that it's unlocked. Lock everything else off. Remember, you can just drag. And by the way, I'm using, I know I seem to be multi-ambidextrous, but I'm using a mouse. I say I'm using a pen tablet. I'm using a mouse and a pen tablet, because my pen tablet doesn't seem to be that sensitive. So for doing things like this, I just usually use my mouse. And when I'm, when I'm selecting little icons, I sometimes use my mouse. And then when I'm drawing, obviously, I use my pen tablet. So anyway, I've got my block here, and that's selected in the materials. Switch over to the layers and click on your solid color, or you could be, I should have really called it block color, but it's solid. So solid. Make sure that it's below your inks. Okay, and then you want to make sure that your block color is selected here. Yeah, and it is. Click on it. If it's not selected there, if you go to the your vertex color, it's not selected. Remember, you can scroll down by looking here. So say you was on pencil and you wanted it to block color, just scroll down and you can swap. Yeah. And remember, we created those colors for our block colors. Now, because we're using this screen here, the rendering screen, if we was to draw now, the colors would be quite dark. So if I was to draw now, if you look at that, I draw, it's going to look really dark. The reason why it's looking really dark is because it's on that shader here. It's like as if it's using your ambient backgrounds and your lighting setup and all that. So for this part of the process, let's just delete that. Let's click onto a different shader. So now we get our bright color, our bright orange. Let's I think I'll make it, no, we'll keep with that. Let's make it a little bit more orangey. You got to remember as well what's going to happen as well is when we eventually add lights, we're going to have to play around with it. Right, so another issue that we're going to come across is, at the moment, I'm drawing this like that, and you might not be set up to draw like that. How you set yourself up to draw like, it might be on stroke. So if it's on stroke, if you want it stroke and fill, you're going to get, you draw and you're going to get that. But we don't want that. We don't want a black outline. So we turn off stroke and we just have turn on fill. And then we just have a fill when we draw like that. Yeah. And let's rub that out. Now you can use the bucket to fill, but I don't use the bucket to fill. There's a reason why I don't use it, because when you use the bucket to fill, you usually have inconsistencies if you haven't drawn a line properly, or and it doesn't directly. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. If I draw, you know what, I'm not going to go into it because it's going to just, this tutorial is going to just be too long. Let's just do the block color, and I'm going to do it the way I do it. And the way I do it is I draw a kind of outline. So I can show you. Make sure the block, let's go into here, make sure the grease pencil layer is below the ink, which it is. And now we're ready to draw. So let's draw a line like that. Kind of. And it fills it. It does an automatic fill. It's a little bit you know, I actually enjoy doing it like this. I prefer than actually doing the fill. I just think it's unusual way of doing it, but it works. You know, for me, I think it works. So don't we're not worrying about so much about the. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're not worrying about. I forgot what I was going to say. Doesn't matter. It's an age thing, you see. As you get older, you kind of forget what you're talking about, or you start talking rubbish, which I often do as well. But anyway, so we can just do a big, massive block color here. I don't usually do it all in one go. I usually just do bits and bits of it. It's just easier to manage. So let's just do up to that towel. Playing a bit of classical music in the background now. Calm me down before I go to bed. It's getting a bit late now. I'm in the UK at the moment. And so your time might be different when you're watching this. But it's getting a bit late now. So what I try and do is when it gets later, I start listening to softer music. I do listen to a heavier type of music. I mean, soft music during the day as well sometimes, but as a rule, I try and listen to nice, calming stuff at night. Okay, so we've got that here. It might be too not as orange as I want it, so maybe make it a little bit darker. I don't know what happened there. I'm not going to start messing about that now. I don't know why that is not working. But anyway, let's not deal with that now. Alright, so we've got that. So let's deal with that other characters. Let's give them all the orange, the same treatment. Orangey, yellow, whatever colour you want to call it. Now, I'm not a genius or anything like that. You might, I didn't, how do I put it? I didn't come up with all these character poses off the top of my head. I used, and I'm not going to be ashamed to admit it, I used the primal artwork as a reference. I never traced it, I drew it. I don't do tracing unless it's a light box, unless I've drawn it first and then I light box it or something like that. As I said to you before, if you want to become a master, then tracing is not the way forward. If you want to become a good artist, you gotta just, it takes a long time, you gotta just draw it. It took a while for me to get this right. I eventually got there. I mean, what I did was I I recorded it, captured the frames, and then drew it by eye. That's the only way you're going to learn. You're going to get good, is you're going to have to draw. Now, when you become a great artist, which I'm not, and when you become a great artist, you might even be, you get to that caliber where you can just draw it out your head. There are some artists who can do that. I'm not one of them. Those guys, are just props to them. To be able to draw something just like out of your head, draw a character like this from just memory, man, you are the man. I take my hat off to you. I just, maybe one day I'll be of that caliber, but I'm way off there. I always need reference. I nearly always need reference. I just can't do stuff. Even imagination wise, I'm not very good at getting it right, just even from using just my imagination. So the other good thing about 3D and using 3D Blender is you can model stuff as well, for your reference. So you can model it first, and then you can use it as your reference in different poses. So that's the power of having a 3D program. You can, especially when you're doing your animation as well. Say, because what the Disney animators used to do is they would, in big productions, they'd have a sculpting guy who would sculpt the characters that they're animating in clay. That's what they would do. And so when you drawing, the really hard poses, you're able to, you've got a mannequin that you can have a look at from different angles. However, we're fortunate because we can use a 3D program, sculpt it. This character here, I do intend to sculpt it as well. Let me think. I've not even talked about this this Scavenger series. What I intend to do with this Scavenger series of tutorials, that's what they're going to be called, Scavenger, is I'm going to do, I think, either 7 or 8 of each character in the series. So in every series, there's going to be 8 tutorials. So we're going to do a introduction one, like this, and then we're going to do a, like a model sheet type one, like how to ink it, etc. Then I'm going to do an animation one, a grease pencil animation. So look out for a grease pencil animation of this character. I'm going to probably do a run cycle of the character in grease pencil. And then I'm going to do a sculpting. I'm going to sculpt him in Blender, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do a tutorial for that as well. And then I'm going to do a 3D character animation, like again a run cycle, but of the character in 3D. However, I'm not going to be using Blender for the animation of the 3D stuff. I find, and this is where we're going to talk about that fanboy stuff, I genuinely don't believe that the animation and rigging in Blender is up to much. I don't like it for 3D stuff. So I use a program called Akitsu, and I'm going to do all more, because basically this Scavenger project is going to be a mixture of 3D animation and grease pencil animation. So my organic characters, like this Rex character, is going to be an actual grease pencil object. And even though I'm going to be animating him in 3D, that's just more practice type thing. He's going to be animated in grease pencil. And all my non-organic animation, like characters that are kind of mechanical, whatever it is, because it's going to be kind of robots in this Scavenger series. I'm gonna animate them in a kitsu and rig them in a kitsu. So the point I'm getting at is that I'm gonna how do I put it? I'm gonna animate all the characters and rig them all in the kitsu, and but the kitsu stuff, probably I am gonna probably by the time I get to that point, the kitsu stuff, not the blender stuff, but the kitsu stuff, I'm probably gonna how do you put it? Have the exclusive membership, so it's like so I can actually earn some money, because being broke is not much fun. You know what I mean? You don't want the bailiffs knocking on your door. So I do need to get some money coming in as well. So I'm gonna probably have the kitsu stuff and do some how do you call it exclusive features on the Patreon page, just for my members, those who supporting my endeavors, whatever. They would get some exclusive, maybe some exclusive tutorials as well on Blender as well, not just on a kitsu, on my Patreon site. But I'm not setting that up yet, so don't worry. I'm not going to start shilling for trying to pump you guys for dough. Yeah, not going to be for a very long time yet before I get to that point. Right, so we've blocked in that color. So what we want to do now is we want to block in his eyes now. So again, we click on hair and click on his eyes, that eye color, which is yellow. It looks like we've done it already, but we haven't. It's just that it's the bitmap image from before. So we've done that. So we do that. It's better to just go through it in stages. I guess the yellow we can do his eye hair as well. Zoom in. You can use, by the way, you can use the Alt key to grab. If you, okay. If you want to grab it, I think we can use the Alt key. I don't know if the Alt key works in draw mode. Let's go object mode, and if I press the Alt key, no, it's not working. Okay, ignore me when I said that. I was obviously at high, talking rubbish as per usual. So I know you can grab it, but I can't remember what the grab key is. It doesn't matter. We just use the hand tool. So let's just do that other yellow eye. Zoom out. I think that's the only other yellow we need to do. So let's do the teeth now. This is the white. And let's do his claws as well, and his other legs, his other kind of white claws here. And see this character here, the Scavenger Rex. Basically, he's a cloned character. In my story, I'm not going to give too much of it away. But in the story, he's a cloned T-Rex. and he has a number. I was going to call him 17, but now just when I was just playing around with it, I might call him, I was going to call him 13, as I said, I named him Rex 13, Z13. But because I'm going to be animating this character in grease pencil, this is another thing you got to think about when you're designing a character. You don't want to make it, whatever you're doing, too complex. Because I'm going to have to draw this 17 again and again and again and again. And if it was 13, it's just going to be harder to deal with. But a nice simple design like number 17 is going to be easier for me to draw. So they're things as an animator, you got to think about things like that. You can't just do something really complicated. Well, you suppose you can, but it's going to just turn your production into just, you know, a mess. It's just going to make things not a mess, but just, you know, if you want to be creating your object for the next, I mean, your animation for the next 10 years, then yeah, make it really, really complicated. But you got to think about things like that, you know. So anyway, we've done that block color. Let's do the legs here. And let's do the legs here in white. Hope you guys don't mind the music. I remember a while ago, I on one of my tutorials, someone commented that they great tutorial, they said, or something like that, but they didn't like my music. You know, you ain't gonna please everyone. You know, some people are gonna like the music, some people are not. You know, just have it in the background. But I have it in the background, to be quite honest, not for you guys, but for me. I want to enjoy it while I'm doing it, and I'm not going to turn it off because you might not like it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am here to help, and I do appreciate you guys supporting the channel and everything. But I also want to enjoy the process of doing it, you know. I want to feel, you know, I want to feel happy as well, and while I'm doing it, I'm not happy, but kind of in my element. So I cater the music for me, not for you. I don't know, I hope that doesn't sound too mean, me saying I'm catering stuff for me, but I am. But it's kind of, you know, I do generally appreciate your, you know, comments and you know, people getting involved and helping whatever with stuff. But it's kind of, the way I see it is like, it's kind of like it's a two-sided team thing. I'm giving you, I'm hopefully giving you guys value by doing this stuff, you know. Value as in the sense of I'm giving, you know, you're learning something from the content, but hopefully, and I'm building up my subscriber, you know, base and that. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties. I'm hoping. Hope I don't sound like a complete dick by saying that. I'm beginning to like this. This is looking not too bad. It's taken a little bit longer than I initially anticipated, though. I don't know how long this stream's going to be. Alright. What I might do, actually, because this stream's going to be taking a lot longer than I initially anticipated. What I might do is block in the rest of the colours without talking, like the shadows, etc. Not shadows, the other bit of block colours, and then once they're done, which is the last part, we'll do with the lights. Yeah. So no, I do a little bit of it, and then I'll stop, and then we move forward. I'll just do the how do you put it, a little bit of the stripes. So we work on a little bit of the stripes. So the stripes, if we remember, is under block color, and it's the grey. And if we just do a little bit of it. I'm not outlining the stripes at all. Yeah. So I'm not totally happy with that. I'm gonna play around with it, but I'm just trying to give you an idea that you can do the stripes. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna stop now. Not stop the stream, but I'm gonna we'll fast forward and then have it all blocked out, and then we're gonna deal with the shadows and then the highlights, and then we deal with the lighting. Yeah, so we're going to fast forward now. Right, so I finished blocking in the character. Basically, I added a little text font here, just showing the Scavenger model sheet, etc. And then I also had added a blue background, this background here, and I added it as a separate grease pencil object. I did that because I eventually, when I add the lighting system, I want this, the main character, I want the main character to omit a shadow. Even though it's a fake shadow, I do want it to emit a fake shadow. Okay, so the next step is adding the shadows and the highlights. So let's get cracking on that. So make sure your character's selected. And flip over to draw mode. And make sure the grease pencil, you're on the grease pencil layer icon. Make sure you're on shadow. Make sure that it's unlocked. Do the same with your shadow in materials. So make sure shadow is unlocked. Let me just double check I'm recording this, because it won't be fun if I'm not. Right, okay. So if we click on, make sure you click on the vertex color tab. And obviously you should have shadow next to it here. Click on it. Now, we even though we created a material, we never created a shadow vertex color. We're going to rectify that issue by clicking on this icon here, and we're going to create a new shadow vertex color palette. Let's call that shadow. Let's call it shadow highlight, because we are going to do a bit. It's shadow and highlighting, so we're kind of giving the character a bit of form as well. So let's call it shadow highlight. And we want a kind of an orange, kind of darker orange, I suppose. Dark orange. Yeah, that'll do. We can add a couple here. So let's have a slightly brighter one. And another even brighter one. That'll do. Let's have a really dark one as well, just in case we really do need it. Let's bring that down a bit. Okay. Make sure fill's on. So that's that done. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a light as well. Start doing the sexy stuff. So let's add a light to this scene as well. So we'll go to object mode and then just go add light point. Bring it up to about here. Now the wattage is going to be very low, so let's increase that wattage to about 1000. Let's see what we're doing by going on the rendered view. This view here, if you click on this here, this would make sure this should highlight our lights so we can actually see them in the scene. So click on this icon here, and now we can see our lighting, our lights. If you have an issue with your lighting and you can't see it for whatever reason, chances are you've inadvertently or by accident turned them off, or you're using an older alpha version or something. My suggestion to way to solve the problem is click on your grease pencil object, go to this object properties icon, scroll down to visibility, and make sure that use lights is on. Yeah, that should solve the problem. If that doesn't solve the problem, then click on the grease pencil and maybe your use lights is off here as well. But usually that solves the problem. And the other thing that you might be forgetting that you're on the wrong shader. You know, that's wrong shader icon, so you'd go onto there. If all those other things fail, then yeah, maybe you're using the wrong version of Blender and you need to download a new version of Blender. Okay, so we've got our light in the scene, so we can actually kind of see what we're doing here. So we want our light. I guess we're gonna have, we'll have one kind of here, and I want another light. Shift D to duplicate an object, and we're gonna have another light here. But this one, I don't want it to be so bright for starters. Just, you can, this icon here is your lighting icon, and you can just we're going to change the wattage, so let's just change it to say 500. Even that's too much. Let's do 200. And this one, probably let's move that to about 700. Now you don't have to obviously do your lighting exactly like mine. You could do yours any way you want, but I'm just also, let's just see where this lighting is in real space. Let's bring it closer to the character. Okay, so I'm not worrying about the lighting for these characters here, because we're just going to be dealing with these two for the, this character here for the moment. Alright, so I'm also thinking it would be nice to have a kind of spotlight on this, you know, his branding as well. So just duplicate the object, and let's lower the wattage on this camera. Gives it a bit of a pop. Yeah, like that. Right, so we've got our lighting set up for the scene. So now we're ready to play with the shadows. So click on the object, go to draw mode, and let's deal with this orange hair first. And see if this works first of all, if it's dark enough. Alright, now first and foremost, what I need to do, which I didn't do, is we go to materials and make sure that fill is on, turn off stroke. So now if we draw, we'll have a fill color, he says confidently. Yeah, that works. So let's obviously we can play with the opacity a bit later, but at the moment let's just block it in. And let's do, so we've done that back leg. Let's undo that. And let's do his arm further away. And I'm thinking we'll have a shadow hair. I'm not sure about that. I'm thinking maybe it's a bit better. Have a shadow under his eye. You know, he's had a rough night. You know, have a shadow under his eye, and maybe a little shadow kind of hair as well, bit of detail. Maybe just at the edge. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. No, I don't. What about, we'd have one hair as well, just thin. And let's give it a bit of form as well. We'll have a shadow. This is the one I did earlier on. I did actually do this in grease pencils, a test run before I did this tutorial. So I'm going to use that and kind of, you can't see it, so I've got two monitors, so I'm putting the other one on the other monitor so I can kind of use it as a kind of reference. So I'm going to be a bit aggressive here with the shadow. I'm going to do it right along the whole character. So let's just like giving it a form. Right, I think that works. As I say to you, we're not worrying about it too much because we're gonna play with the opacity in a little while. Okay, so let's do some on the bottom of him, right, underneath the leg. And maybe give it a bit of form here as well. Maybe a little bit here. I don't know if that'll work or not. Right, so we've done that. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to play around with the opacity settings on the shadow. So we go to the base color and click on it, and then we're just going to bring down the alpha channel so we can see through it. So that looks a bit nicer now, not so aggressive. And then what we can do is build upon it. So now if I was to draw again on it, we've say if let's go back and with say a darker or even a lighter color. we go with a, say, see the thing is, I like it, but I just think it looks too, compared to my first one, it doesn't look, the colours don't look as nice. But let's bring it up a bit more. It's a bit better. Okay. So I'm thinking we'll have a lighter, we're going to add a very light highlight here, a bit more orangey as well. I'll add another one, and we'll use that one. Let's see how we get on with that. It's kind of just building up, giving it a bit more form. I don't know how dark this is going to come out on your screen, if you're going to be able to see these highlights that well. Hopefully it reads pretty well. Let's go back to a darker one. Yeah, that looks better. So much better now. Okay. So let's say I'm playing around with mine. We're at a point where it's just, you know, what you think works and what doesn't. You know, you use a bit of your kind of artistic judgment and see what you feel works and what doesn't. You know, for the animation, you really need to, as I'm assuming, you really need to lock down your colors a bit better, so that you don't, you probably wouldn't do things as detailed as this for your animation. You want to probably keep it to, you know, minimum colors, because remember, you're gonna have to be coloring every single one of these frames in. So I'm relatively happy with that. So now let's add some more highlights, but really a nice brighter spot light, again with the vertex color. So let's add a new one. Let's bring that up. I'm gonna have a white. Add that, and let's see how this comes out. Let's save this. So if I mess up or something, I'm not going to be crying. I've been known to cry a few times. See, maybe I'm thinking the highlight, I could have even done the highlight on a different, created a new material for it, and then you can add a bit more punch to it. I might go do that later, I'm not sure yet. I'll see how this works, but it's not so aggressive, this highlight. You really want a nice highlight on the top of these. Yeah, that works. Well, maybe not. I actually set up my hotkey now while you weren't looking. I set my hotkey up so that I don't have to keep them going up there. How do you do? You set your hotkeys up. Just go into preferences. I'm not going to do it now because this tutorial is really running. It's going to be really long. I didn't want it to be too long. Right. Let's do another little sexy highlight here. Perhaps another one here. No. Maybe if we... Nah. About here. No, it's not working that. Let's put another little sexy highlight here. That'll work. I knew that one would. So I'm kind of happy-ish with this. I'm going to add another light here. Do play that one. Move it over here. So it's right over here. That kind of works. Let's bring this up a bit more. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna fast forward and I'm gonna highlight these other characters. Basically, that's it now. I'm obviously gonna highlight these other characters and then I'm gonna show the picture, the finished picture, as probably just do an edit as showing it all finished up and you can see it all nice. Oh, right, before I do that, let me just quickly show you one other thing. Let me just add a shadow in the FX panel. Even though we've got lights, we haven't got shadows. And Grease Pencil can't do real-time shadows, but it can do fake shadows. So I'm going to play with that feature a bit here. So add effect, shadow. And what we want to do is increase the offset, increase the pixels, blur, take the you see what I meant when I said to you I'm gonna have that background as a separate object. It just gives everything a bit more of a punch now. It just looks a bit sexy with that lighting, with the shadow, the fake shadow going onto that black that thing there, that separate grease pencil object I made. Again, it's just for a model sheet. It's only just me showing off being a bit sexy. Obviously, I'm gonna play around with it a bit more. But right, so as I say, this is kind of. I'm gonna obviously do the rest of these, highlight them up, and kind of sexy it up a bit. But that's basically it. Thanks for watching. You know the drill. You wrong-uns. Hit subscribe. Hit like. If you've seen anything on the workflow tutorials that you think I can improve, put a note below, because I'm not perfect. I want to learn. So if you see something that you think, oh, maybe you could do that a bit better, whatever, put polite messaging so that we can grow together. Right, old Jack, aka Blender Ninja, signing off. Laters.